record on this computer?
We don't know how to. Okay, we're still going.
Oh, it's recording. Okay, so welcome back, guys. Stephen disappeared, so Kayce and I are videoing this. So Kayce, talking about camp is what you're doing. So
Yeah, we were talking about camp.
What's your favorite memory from camp?
Actually, last year learning square dancing was probably my favorite event, but my favorite memory is definitely meeting 3 of my best friends. I remember my first year as a camper, we had tornadoes. So the wonderful co-host Caroline Mays was scared of tornadoes, and her mom was a chaperone in my cabin. And so she had came over to our cabin, and that's when it all started. We became best friends, and ever since this day, we've always had each other's back.
Oh, yeah. So, going off of that, how has 4-H affected you outside of 4-H? How has it affected you in, like, your other events? Because you're involved in FFA, your job. How does it affect you?
So 4-H has definitely made me a more outspoken person. I can probably talk to a wall if I needed to. I remember I always grew up in 4-H. I have 2 older sisters, so my parents like to say I've been through college and back. But there's a lot of times that I'm like, wow, this is something that I remember as a kid. So now that I'm an area officer for FFA, I'm our county president for our council. I'm the club president. I'm vice president of my chapter. It definitely has made me stick to my roots and continue to expand on agriculture, definitely.
Yeah, so going off of agriculture, what animals do you show, and what's some of your favorite parts of showing them?
So when I was little, I showed cattle. I've always showed sheep, but after my dad passed away, I continued showing sheep and still do to this day. But probably my favorite moment is state fair showmanship. But this past year, I've kind of gained a new concept of showing, where I have a few families that you could say they look up to me. So I am kind of helping them out, and that shows. I'll see them at county fairs, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing at home that we could do?" And I'll tell them. I mean, I think in the livestock industry, we just have to remember that nothing's a secret. We're just here to help each other, and it's about making the memories and not all about who's going to win that day.
Yeah, so what is your favorite 4-H events and places that you've been through 4-H?
My favorite event, 4-H camp, hands down. But is my screen frozen on your guys' end?
No,
you're good.
Okay, so my favorite event is 4-H camp. But the farthest I've ever went for 4-H is, where did I go? I have never went to like anything big. So like what Caroline and Seth do, I've never done that. I've always kind of stayed local. But 2 years ago, they made me go to a lock-in. That was fun. And Caroline was going to force me to go to something this year, I think.
almost got her to sign up for Congress. We were very close.
So close.
But then
I have 1 year left. We'll see.
Next year.
Okay, you're going home, I guess.
Yeah, so going off of your favorite events, what you take things to the state fair for projects wise, don't you?
Yes.
What is your favorite project been that you've done?
Cake decorating is what I put in the building, the 4-H building. My sisters are really talented at cake decorating. I honestly don't have the patience for it. So it takes me probably about 2 or 3 days to finish one cake, but they probably could whip it out in like an hour. um, but I also show sheep down at the state fair, which consumes a lot of my time during the summer.
So, have you participated? Had they had any virtual shows for showing sheep with everything down?
So my first jackpot show wasn't supposed to be until next weekend. So they have canceled that. And what we are talking about is virtual shows, but they're kind of trying to see how other states start it and see what we can improve on it. They've sent us like videos to like practice on how to take videos, because like you have to turn your phone sideways, you have to get this angle, this angle. And for like pigs, that may be easier because you just walk the pig towards it. But sheep, the videographer would have to go all around your lamb. So it's gonna be a different aspect of showing, I would say. I still would encourage our county kids to still like try. It's a good experience for these kids.
Absolutely, and that's one thing. When we were, I I called in and talked to the fair board president for Clinton County, and there's been no decisions. And as of right now, we're still planning on having a fair because it's at the end of June. But that was something I kicked. Him and I talked about today. I said, let's also keep in mind that we have the virtual option, and Ranch House Design has been holding shows through that where the kids have been, you just film yourself and send the video, and then they get judges to evaluate the kids doing it. So yeah, it's things that we can still definitely do. Is it the same? No, but you're still getting that opportunity to go out there and work with your animal and get judged.
Yeah, and like some kids, this may be better for them. It may make them spend a little more time out in the barn. It's going to definitely bring families closer. I kind of think this Corona thing is meant to be, honestly, because I know that it's helped my family. It's helped me because I'm so active that it's finally given me a chance to finally slow down, look at the big picture, focus on the things I really need to be focusing on, and not be focusing on all those small little details.
Right. And that's a great way to look at it. I think that's one thing that I hope the kids have been doing is not necessarily looking at things in a negative light, that sometimes we got to look at the positive side. And, sometimes it's silver linings, and sometimes there is some, like you said, there's more family time, there's more bonding. Things are slowing down. I know a lot of people are picking up, things that they've been on the to-do list for 10 years. Like, I'd never have the time for that. Now we got a lot of time in the world to basically get it done.
Yeah.
So,
I have cleaned my room, so Caroline would know that's a very hard task for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Intense moment right there. But I definitely think the livestock industry is going to take a hit. But I know that from my background in livestock, every family's going through the same thing. There's no family that's there together at state fair. Some people may have not hit a show at all, and some people may have hit 2 shows. But I think state fair is going to be a different one this year, for sure.
For sure.
I think some of this stuff, and especially state fair, is going to mean a little bit more. And I think it's going to be not just state fair. A lot of things that when you had things taken away, camp. I'm going to appreciate camp so much more next year, especially going on into week 2 when everyone gets tired and cranky. We're like, we can't do it again. We're like, well, yeah. What about last year? We got a break. I think.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be a little more appreciative, and some things are going to be even more special, which is pretty impressive to do because camp's special as it is, but giving that extra motivation, not having it this year, I think is one thing that's going to be, it's going to be different and cool at the same time.
It's definitely going to make me appreciate county fairs and all the people that are behind the scenes a lot more, because they're having to do so much more this year than they've ever had to do. They're having to think of ins and outs and what they could do best for the kids, because honestly, county fairs are what some kids live for, and that's all they show at. And I think we maybe have like 2 kids in our club that show, but I mean, I have a little girl that she calls me every night. She has a bottle calf. She calls me every single night to tell me how Snowflake's doing. And I adore it. I love it every second of it. Even if it's Snowflake got out in the yard today, it just makes my day knowing that something little is making her day.
So what was it like, obviously counselor and other stuff, leadership roles, what was that like when kids started calling you and looking up to you, that change in things, and that change in dynamics, what was that like?
So it hit 2 years ago when I was elected president for our club. It hit because kids would see me at football games. They'd see me doing various events, and they would just be like, "Hey," and they would like talk to me. And I know they see me as like this high up person, and I'm like, I'm just a human being. Like, I'm not much. I run a meeting once a month. Like, that's all I do for this. And there was a little girl that came up to me and she goes, "I want to be like you one day." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" She goes, "You're in so many events and somehow you always make time for us." And I was like, "Well, that's kind of my role." And she goes, "No, there's some people, they just blow us off. You always have a conversation with us." And so it kind of took me by heart. And I was like, maybe me staying in 4-H and doing all this stuff was meant to be and helping me out in the long run.
Absolutely, and I think Caroline talked with Libby about her transition and having kids look up to her in the counselor role and regional rep and all that stuff that they've got going on.
Yeah, it's a very odd moment when you realize it.
It's also
It
different
kind of feels.
because.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's also different because, like, I know Caroline and I still look up to certain people in 4-H and FFA. I can remember every single counselor from every camp. I can remember every officer for the club and everything like that and what they did for us. So, I mean, it's just the little things that little kids remember that I still remember in my brain somehow.
It's those special moments that have great meaning and impact on your life, and help mold you and who you are right now and move you in the direction to the person who you're going to be in the future. It's and that's one thing that our goal is staff and volunteers and leaders and stuff like that is for 4-H, is to help you guys along with that journey.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate every staff member on my end of things. There have been countless days that we just sit there and they wonder what they're getting themselves into. My club personally has went through a lot of leaders. Alicia Constant has stuck out with us for a few years now, and she's definitely grown our program. We went from probably 10 to 15 kids to now 40 kids, and for Albany, that's a pretty good number.
Caroline, how many's in your club now?
I want to say around 30, 35, so.
That's what I was thinking. It's fairly comparable.
Yeah. So going back to camp, Kayce, what's your favorite part at camp each year?
I was having this discussion the other day with someone. I always like to see the kids when they're lined up the first day. They're waiting to get inside. You can see how excited they are. And then I like to see the transition of when they finally warm up and they're just like, their personality just comes out. And some kids, they're just those shy little kids and their personality comes out and you're like, okay, you have warmed up. We're ready to roll now. Those icebreaker games sometimes get a little different, but I mean, it's little kids. Just sometimes it's a kid's first time away from home, and I'm a very motherly child, so I know that I always maybe protect my kids a little bit too much, but I try to be there for them.
Yeah, it's better to be that way.
I wouldn't send them out into the woods if they're crying.
Yeah. So what was your favorite thing to do as a camper yourself?
So my first year was probably the cabin games or all of our like activities like canoeing. But then as I got older, the dance was definitely my favorite. Paintball was fun. That was fun. I got really competitive at that one. But I remember my first year dancing. Caroline and I just sat on that bench and we were just like, we are not getting up. You guys can't force us, because we had 2 siblings that were counselors, and they're like, come on, get up. Like, stop being, you guys stop. And so finally, John Lang and Jensen finally pulled us up and like just made us dance. And
We had
probably the best moment of our lives. We had no choice at all at that point.
Nope, no choices.
Yeah, that's one thing that getting the kids involved, whether it be the dance or anything else, the night hike, it's always trying to get them engaged in that. And usually it's, Ledger Grooms is one I always talk about. Square dancing. We got him on square dancing, and that boy is hooked. He talks about that all the time.
Oh yeah.
I loved it. I was like, this is a great thing to bring into camp, and I loved every second of it. I even came back and I was like, we are starting this. Like, these kids love to just dance all the time. We are starting this in Albany. I mean, no kid has taken it on yet, but I'm hoping sometime this year some kid's going to come up to me and be like, yeah, let's square dance. I'm ready.
Why don't you just set up a meeting, set it up?
Yeah, I should. Never thought about that.
I mean, you are in a leadership role.
I am. So maybe that's what I need to do. I just need to be like, hey, parents, I'm going to have this square dancing meeting. Your kids wants to do it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, teach them on Zoom, Kayce. They can practice all break.
I know. There's so many people that are having dance classes on Zoom. So why not?
I'm for it. I'll join your class.
Oh, you're going to help me?
Yep.
You could be our caller.
You can sing the song in the back. Do a little yodel.
Oh, we can invite Steven and he can be the caller.
I'll call, but I'm not singing.
Oh, dang. We'll play some background music for that one.
I actually, in college, I had 2 dance classes, and square dancing were in both of those. So I was a little rusty when we did it at camp, but it came back to me after the first couple rounds. And then by the time we did it again in the fall, our fall summit there for 4-H staff members, we did that. And so it's not all the staff members were enthused about it, but I think I had Sharon Van Dusen with me, and Sharon was heavy at one time in square dancing, and so it was much easier with her, going through that process because she was familiar with it. And so it took me a little bit, but from camp I wasn't as rusty, so I picked it up fairly quickly.
Some kids loved it and some kids just couldn't stand it. And I always told my campers, you always got to try something one time. If you don't like it that one time, then maybe revisit it next year. Because I had a little girl that was like, I am not going canoeing. I hate it. And I was like, have you ever been? She goes, no. And I was like, well, you got to try it one time. And I think she was actually in like Seth Hansen's color group. So I was like, Seth, please do not get her soaked. Whatever you do, make this the best experience of your life. And
well, we don't soak kids at the canoe.
Well, no, I mean, on the bingo there was one about, have you ever been canoeing and stayed dry? And I was like, classic. That's a good one.
sometimes kids pick up a paddle out of the water and it splashes back on someone, but accidents happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, accidents happen.
Not always, right?
Or they just don't know
Right.
how to use it quite correctly yet, so they're trying to figure it out, and everyone, just gets the water.
Hey, sometimes things don't always go as planned. So,
I
but
definitely missed community here.
man, that was tough. And this would be 2 years in a row we didn't do any canoeing because we didn't have it last year because of all the flooding,
Yeah.
and we obviously aren't going to have it this year because there's no camp. So that's tough.
Everyone was getting the email, all the counselors getting that email, and I was like, guys, I haven't got it yet. And then Caroline's like, I still have, Caroline's like, I still haven't. And I was like, okay, well, here it is.
Hey, just
Yeah,
show up to camp, then be like, I didn't get the letter. Camp is still on.
We should. All those counselors are with our bags, and we're like, we didn't know it was canceled.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
What are you talking about? Show up Sunday night. We'll just do our own camp.
Mm.
How many counselors were there then? 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh, we are at the max. 10 people right there.
Right there. Spring counselors.
So what's counselor selection like your first time till now? What's that process been like? Did you make it the first time you tried?
Yes, I have made it every year. This year I had another event that was going on the same day. So I unfortunately did not get to go. But counselor selection for me, I mean, it isn't anything hard. I wouldn't say anyone would ever think it was hard. It's just if you don't really know anyone, I mean, at times it could be a little difficult, but if you're like me and could talk to this wall behind me, then it's quite easy. But for the shy people, I think it was last year, there was a girl that was there, and she was shy, and one of the staff members had asked me to be her partner, and I of course said yes. And she at first was really shy, and I think she thought I was gonna like judge her and stuff, and I kind of told her, I was like, this is judge free zone, like we are just here to have fun, like be yourself. And she like started cracking jokes, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah, there's always there. I'm waiting for the story that we get where it's like the kid's really shy at first, and then they come out of their shell, and then they're like, I didn't realize that they were shy because they just are so involved and so active and outgoing after that thing. So it's always interesting, especially.
I know when I first showed up, I was like really scared to like even talk to anyone. I was like, okay, I know that's Caroline, Braden, and Seth, but can I talk to them? Like, am I allowed to talk? I remember we sat there in the church, and I like stared at them because we were all at different tables. I stared at them. I was like, can we talk? We ended up talking for sure. But my favorite game was definitely the music, where we put like our headphones in and we had a.
We learned that I cannot read lips at all.
And she's really bad about showing her lips, like enunciating. So bad.
I'm not great at it.
We tried twin telepathy, but that didn't work either. So.
Well, that's one thing that I appreciate when Cody brought that up. I was like, oh great, we're working on our non-verbal communication skills. And then when you think you have it figured out, it's also just the most random sentence that you can ever think of.
Yeah, there's some that are just like wouldn't even make sense if someone even said it in normal life. Like you're like, why is this even a sentence? I think Seth said that during his interview. He was like, they don't make sense at all.
Yeah, he was the one. That was the one that I picked up on. I remember when we were going through the evaluation project, going through and process and going through and evaluating kids on that stuff, and the nonverbal communication skills is one that I worked on heavily because there's gonna be times where you got to communicate to each other, and obviously you can always use that, but sometimes you're just like like what's going on, pay attention, different stuff like that you've got to be able to
Yeah.
with kids and other counselors.
I'd say something different about being a counselor and being a camper, like Seth said during his interview, and I'm sure Caroline has said it too. There's that moment when to have fun, and then there's a moment when you got to stand up and do what's right. And I mean, that was hard. My first year, I just wanted to, Carly Shuey, bless her heart, she was still a camper, and we were counselors, and she was our buddy, and we would try to get her to do things like counselors, but then we had to sit back and remember that she's still a camper, and it was just so hard. We're like, oh, come on with us, and then we're like, you're still a camper, and then we'd be like, oh wait, just come with us, it's fine, they won't notice. Just like at the pool, the counselors, that's kind of like the point when we all like bond together is at the pool. We play so many card games.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a moment to bond right there
while watching the kids.
Oh yeah, sometimes I swim, and I am not a person to swim.
I don't think I've ever swam. Always played the card games.
As a counselor?
As both.
As campers, we really didn't swim either.
We really didn't. Kayce and I would take naps.
That is prime time as a camper to take a nap.
It is. It's a great time.
But, why would we be tired?
No, you're never tired at camp.
You go to bed early.
I was going to say, you guys are in bed on time and following all the rules.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sleep by 11 every night.
Lights out, 10:30.
Yes.
Wake up, 6:30.
Yeah, that's how late we wake up, Kayce.
I remember last year going into Caroline's cabin, and our darn kids weren't even up. I'm like, Caroline, my kids are all ready to go.
I know, I was just sitting there, like, eating my snacks. It's like 6:30. Casey's like, why aren't your kids up? And I'm like, they'll have plenty of time.
Caroline, I used to always call Caroline or text her, and I'm like, Caroline, you're going to be late. Because last year we had a competition. Who would be up there, and whoever was last didn't get any points. And I was like, Caroline, you're going to be late.
We never got any points.
Yeah, you would always see her trucking up 2 minutes before. She would show up right on time. I'm like, Caroline.
Oh, that's right. You were that cabin.
I'm the cabin that was there like 20 minutes early.
Kayce used to make me when we were campers, we used to get up at 4:30 a.m. to take the first showers, so they were hot.
You appreciate that, so don't even.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely happened, though.
There's some days, though, when you wake up, some camps are so hot and humid, it's like, nah, I'm good on a hot shower. Cold one would work just fine.
Very true.
There were times that I'm like, I really just want a cold shower, but with that pressure that comes down at camp,
the pain
brings back memories.
That stuff will
on my back.
peel the skin right off of you.
If you have a sunburn, I feel bad for you.
It hurts so bad.
I can say I never have burnt at 4-H camp.
Oh, so you weren't able to mark had aloe applied?
Nope.
Neither of us were.
I also was not able to mark been on the night hike. So I think next year is our last year. So I think I'll go on a night hike.
Yep. And get sunburnt.
Let's not.
I think I'll leave that one. I'll leave that one to other rounds.
You gotta get them all filled in.
Yeah. Seth texted me and he goes, wow, you didn't get a blackout. And I was like, no, I have never got a sunburn at camp. I apply sunscreen or I'm in the shade.
Mm-hmm. Kayce's the one that carries sunscreen around and forces everyone to put it on.
Good. Good. Skin cancer is no joke.
Mom.
So what is one project that you've done in 4-H that people who know you might not know that you participated in?
I did shooting sports as a youth. My my cousin's parents were the people that ran it, so I kind of just jumped in, shot 22. I think that's all I've ever done. I think the only like crafts and stuff. I did crafts, shooting sports, beef, sheep, and there's one more. Can't remember now. Arts, crafts, cake decorating. But shooting sports is the one that I dropped when I was little. It's just something that I enjoy shooting, but the target part of it, I just would get aggravated, and I was just like, I just want to shoot wherever I want to shoot. And
Oh, that's not safe.
no, I wasn't a safe person. And you gotta like remember, you probably weren't around when Ben Messner was going to camp, but he definitely, when he and I were at camp the same years, it was definitely something, because we are like two peas in a pod, and so shooting sports was not always the best option for us.
Well, I'm glad there was adults there to keep you safe and keep everyone else safe while you were participating.
We were always safe, always had our eye glasses on, we had our earplugs in, shooting down range, 100%. But I do remember our safety like day, it was raining and they still had us going, and I was like, it is raining, what are we doing? But we still had to make sure we were doing our safety. I was like, this is ridiculous as a kid.
Good for you. So have you been in 4-H since like a Clover kid, or?
So I have two older sisters. One is 28, almost 29, and then one's 22. And so I've been born and raised as a 4-H member, an FFA member. All my life I can remember is going to 4-H meetings, going to this, going to that.
That's awesome. That's what I figured, kind of based on what you're talking about with your siblings and stuff. But I just I wasn't sure. So what is the 4-H? What are things you've taken away from 4-H, that lessons you've learned and stuff like that?
Definitely my leadership and how I pursue things, how I look on things as a kid isn't the same way I'm going to look at it in the future. There was a little kid that I told the other day when they called me, and she was so devastated because she had heard that most shows were getting canceled. And I said, well, you got to think about this. This is giving you time to work on your showmanship, because your showmanship is going to matter more on the virtual than it is going to matter at a show, because at a show they're really just going to be there to look over the animals, and then showmanship is when you would focus on your showmanship. And that's something I stress to all families in my county, is showmanship is something that I would rather see a kid have great showmanship rather than have the best lamb in the barn or the best animal in the barn. I think the way kids treat their animals, the way they spend time with their animals is definitely more important, shows them the values and the life lessons in that industry.
Showmanship was one for me that I struggled with, because I don't do well with talk. Well, at the time I didn't do well with talking to people, or so having a judge ask me questions, I just locked up. And of course, my first time out, the judge was like, what's the gestation period? And I was like, 9 months. And then she's like, no. And then she broke it down in days. And I was like, it's still 9 months, and then I'm arguing it. And so she's like, well, it can be longer, it can be shorter, and I was like, oh man. And so that one, it took me a long time. But when I finally won my first winning showmanship, probably one of the most satisfactory thing. And I still have this showmanship vest that I won at Andrew County show. I'll break that up every now and again at 30 years old and brush off my showmanship from my showing days. So pretty proud of that.
Showmanship definitely is my favorite part. There are times that things get a little political in showing. So showmanship's my time where I'm just like, this is all about me and my lamb and how I'm going to present it. And it doesn't matter about how it looks necessarily on muscle tone and all that stuff. It just matters about how fast I can stand up. And I always tell the kids, any kid that's ever asked me about showmanship, I always tell them it is okay to say, sir or ma'am, I honestly don't know that question, but I will get back to you. I went to 2 or 3 showmanship clinics in my time, and I've been born and raised as showing livestock. And the kid that won nationals when I went to Louisville, Kentucky, his response was, I don't know that answer. That's his only response. He said, I do not know the answer to that question. I will get back to you. And the judge just thought that was the best thing ever. Some kids will try to make up some story. I know 3 years ago at State Fair, they threw the tricky question of how many wethers are born every year. And when you're in the moment, you're not thinking, you're just trying to win, and your brain's going 100 miles per hour. And the real question is, do you know the answer, or are you just trying to spit something out to sound like you know the answer? And so when the kids that said the answer, the judge got on the microphone and he goes, there's only 3 kids that told me the right answer. And you could see like all the parents looking around and they're like, what's the question? And when the judge announced it, all the kids, like, you could see their eyes just light up and we're like, oh my gosh, that's the real question. And it was so funny.
You know, that's one thing, is tripping people up and seeing their reaction. Catching someone in the moment on the spot is also one of those things that can get a lot of people. Like, I was in college and my professor asked me something and I don't remember what the question was and I didn't know it. She caught me way off guard. So I returned a question back to her. I said, how many steers were born in the state of Kansas? And she was like, 9,000. I was like, well, steers are made, not born. And so I was like, by the way, don't be like me. This is not an example of be like Steven. This is an example of, you know, she's got her doctorates in animal science and highly successful, but you can be caught in the moment. So just be, you know, honest and try and think things through, but don't be like me and return fire because you're being stubborn.
I had a question like that one time in an interview, an officer interview. They're like, it was a trick question. I can't remember exact words. And I just sat there, and I remember one person always told me, sit there, gather your thoughts, and repeat the question back to him. And in my blonde moment, I was repeating the question back to him, and I stopped, and I was like, do you know that question's false? And they're like, yeah, we were trying to trip you up. And I was like, okay, maybe that's why people always tell me to repeat the question back to you.
It's like, which weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of lead?
Yeah, like those questions just really trip me up sometimes. And I'm like, wait, what?
And see, you even thought on that one. You're like,
yeah, I did. I was like,
you ran it back and you're like, I better say this again before I say something and get caught up on this one.
Yes.
My favorite question that's always asked is, and I don't remember where I picked this up. It might have been FFA area officer interviews I went and watched, and it's, if you can be anything in the refrigerator, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that one comes up. That one came up in our officer interviews for our chapter for FFA, and it wasn't just our fridge; it was our whole kitchen. And I said I would be the mixer because I could take everyone's opinions and thoughts and try to mix it all in to make one whole piece of bread or something like that. I had a better answer during that thing, but it's something like that.
Yeah, it's always those ones, like, you are so prepared when you go in for that stuff. And what, Caroline, what were some of the questions? Did you have anything like that when you went in for regional rep interview?
I think there was some. I can't really remember what they were, but we definitely had some. Like, Kyle Hansen was one of our judges this past year, and he asked us, Because one question is like, did you make your bed this morning? And everyone's like, what? Like, what did you just ask me?
That would be a weird one. Did you make your bed? I don't know. Did I?
Depends on the day.
I have issues. Like if I come, when I'm going to bed and everything's like neat and orderly, I'm like, I can't handle this. I've got to have chaos, so I don't make mine.
Mine's made right now, but that's because my room's clean.
Mine depends on the day. That one day I had actually made it, and I was like, yeah, I made my bed. I was like, of all days for you to ask me this.
You probably had
coincidence. Oh yeah, it's always I enjoy those so much, and there's some kids that you can just tell just kind of get caught and they freeze up and they're really like, oh, I don't know. And some kids just answers are just like brilliant, and you're like, where would you even come through that?
That's Seth. Anytime you ask Seth a question, he's just like 100%. He's got an answer, and it's gonna be like way over what you were gonna try to ask him.
Yep, every time.
I know that we did area officer interviews. Like, we didn't do them together, but we both had them, and there was a question, and I remember coming out of the interview, and after everyone had interviewed and we had found out the officers that got it, I remember asking him like a question on one, and I was like, what did you say? And his is like a big long paragraph, and I think mine was like 2 or 3 sentences. I was like, yeah, okay, Seth, that's why you got president right there.
He likes to go a little overboard.
Very knowledgeable person.
Very.
Caroline, sorry.
Go
ahead. No, you're good.
Well, without having school and track, what does your life look like, and how do you feel about not having like school, especially?
Not having school, the first like couple days, I was like, oh, this is not going to be that bad. But personally, I have more homework now than I did when I was in school. I also tend to lose a lot of focus at home because there's a lot of things running through my mind, like I could do this, I could do that, and schoolwork's not on that list of things that is on my mind. I wake up every morning and I chore with mom, and then I head to babysit these 2 cute little kids and go throughout my day. Lots of FaceTime calls to my friends because the kids sleep all day basically because it's cold out. But it's definitely been different. I know that, as I said earlier, this coronavirus definitely has impacted me and made me realize what is important in my life and helped me slow down and look at the bigger picture in life.
Where does 4-H rank in your priorities?
So all organizations in my life, doesn't matter if it's FBLA, anything like that, or FCA, anything like that, it's always number 2 or number 3 in my life. So it goes my faith, my family, and then my organizations, because I do so much for them and I want to pay as much attention and focus into them as I can. I honestly would rather be in like FFA or 4-H meeting than be in a classroom learning for school. Hands down. School probably should be up there in my priorities, but we could just throw it in there with the organizations.
So what are your plans for yourself after high school? How many years you got left? You guys are all the same to me. So
I think we're 1 or 2.
So I'll be a senior. Trying not to make Caroline cry here. I will be a senior along with Braden and Seth. So this year for 4-H camp was going to be our second to last year. So next year definitely will be our last year. Yep. So kind of sad moment. We lost a year, but I think we all plan to come back anyway. But I plan to go to the University of Missouri and specialize with kids with Down syndrome. I have a big passion for kids with disabilities, and Down syndrome is one thing that I would like to focus on.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a different field to get into, but it's one that is very, very, very rewarding.
Yes, definitely the 4-H and 4-H has definitely helped me prepare for this, because some of the kids' questions I know I need to have a lot more patience on, and working with kids with Down syndrome and different disabilities is definitely going to take a lot of patience, a lot of time. So these kids are just preparing me for the big world, I guess.
Yeah, 4-H will 4-H is one of those things that'll prepare you in ways you don't realize, and then 10 years later you'll look back and be like, "Oh wow, this is what I really, got from that," and you
Yeah.
pay it forward. So will you be a 4-H volunteer?
Yeah, I kind of want to come back and be a chaperone. And I kind of want to there's something that our county doesn't have, is people to step up. I know when my dad was alive, he always did the beef side of things. So if anyone had any questions for beef, or sometimes people for swine would call him, he would always ask that question. So I would probably volunteer to be the livestock part. If anyone needed help or anything like that, advice, I'd probably step in and help. But I got to get my roots set first.
That's understandable. Understandable. Well, I don't want to keep you up like you're going to bed anytime soon, like it's a school night.
I
But
mean, probably, because I go to bed really early.
but we have been talking for like an hour, so you guys have schoolwork and other things that you could be doing. So I don't have any questions. Caroline, do you have any more?
I don't think I have any more either.
Well, I appreciate both of you, and Kayce, you as well, because Caroline's been a co-host. So, and this is episode 3 that she's been on. So she's a veteran now. But I appreciate coming on and talking all things 4-H with us, and it's been pretty interesting. So,
Thank you guys for having me.
all right. Well,
Thank you.
good luck with everything.
Yep. See you guys later.
See ya.